Hey there world, I'm your friendly internet DM Devious, and this is the Beginner's Guide to D&D 3.5. It's another installment of our character creation tutorial, and this time I'm going to talk about the playable races in the D&D 3.5 Player's Handbook and each one's unique characteristics. In the standard rulebook, there are 7 playable races: humans, dwarves, elves, gnomes, half-elves, half-orcs, and halflings. We're going to discuss them in that order. However, before I get started on that, I want to talk about a few ways the standard D&D universe works in order to avoid confusion later. First of all, religion. D&D has a pantheon of gods, meaning that in this world there are multiple deities. They most definitely exist, have power, and can intervene. Choosing to worship in D&D is not a matter of whether you believe in the existence of a god or not, as in the game world they are real and nobody questions that. A lot of races also have a specific deity they worship as a result of their own creation myth or whatnot. Also, since we'll be talking about different types of species in this video, some of them will be different sizes from humans, so we need to introduce the idea of creature size. Basically, D&D has a scale that lets you know the rough size of creatures from fine to colossal, with the creature's size affecting its attributes. In this video, we really only need to know that humans and all species roughly the same size are medium-sized, as humans are the baseline, and some of the playable races fall one step below that and are small-sized. Okay, let's actually get started, starting off with humans. Humans are, as they are in most fantasy genres, the least specialized of any of the races. They have very few unique bonuses and special abilities, which makes them perfect for new players. In fact, I recommend anyone new to the genre itself play a human due to them being highly versatile and fairly balanced for any gameplay approach. We don't really need to go over the physical descriptions, as there's nothing especially different from humans in D&D to the humans in the real world physically. In every lore aspect, humans can be described as varied. Humans have decent relations with other races, they have no tendencies in any direction on the alignment chart, don't have a specific religious deity they worship, no unique language, and plenty of reasons to adventure. They're the white bread of lore. Yes, they aren't inherently interesting, but that means you can make a human character basically anything, with any background you want or class. Now let's get into the gameplay. Humans are medium-sized creatures, meaning that they, surprise, have no bonuses or penalties relating to size. The human baseline speed is 30 feet, which sounds incredibly arbitrarily defined, as well as being a distance rather than a speed, but we'll get to why it's like that eventually. Humans also get a bonus speed at first level and 4 bonus skill points, which may not mean anything right now, but basically it means they make up for not having special bonuses by having more access in other areas of gameplay. For bonus languages, remember those from last video? Humans can get anything that isn't a secret language. Humans also have no favorite class, which will be more important when we talk about the classes. Next, dwarves. Dwarves are defined as being a fairly serious race with a tendency towards materialism and a highly calculated nature. They're about 4 to 4.5 feet tall and weigh in the same range as humans, as they're quite stocky. Dwarves usually have a skin tone in the mid-color range with dark hair and eyes. The men are also known for their beards, which are pretty incredible in all the art. Dwarves become adults at 40 and can live to be over 400 years old. When it comes to lore, dwarves are most closely connected to gnomes, and they tend to get along passably well with humans, half-elves, and halflings, but there's tension between dwarves and elves over matters of ideology and lifestyle. However, it's rarely a serious problem. There's a bigger problem between dwarves and half-orcs, with mutual mistrust being the general norm. When it comes to alignment, dwarves are almost always lawful and tend towards being good, being a race that values tradition, rules, and the strength of their word. Dwarves tend to reside underground and get most of their money through trade, the most common dwarven profession abroad being craftsmen and the second most common being bodyguards or mercenaries. It isn't uncommon to find dwarves adventuring though, as most dwarves would view bringing honor to their clan as a worthy reason to travel and fight. When it comes to religion, dwarves have their own god, Moradin, also known as the Soul Forger, who created the Dwarven race. Dwarven names are a bit peculiar, as dwarves are named by their clans rather than their parents, and are always given names that are a traditional name from their clan. If they dishonor their clan, their name is taken away and they must take a non-dwarven name as punishment. Next is the gameplay stuff. Most non-human races have an ability adjustment, meaning that their ability scores post-creation are changed slightly, and dwarves get their constitution boosted by 2 and their charisma docked by 2. Dwarves tend to be hardy but a bit rougher around the edges and worse at diplomacy or social manipulation. Dwarves are also medium-sized, having no size modifier. The dwarven land speed is less than average at 20 feet, but their speed isn't decreased by wearing heavier armor, unlike every other race. Dwarves also have dark vision, meaning they can see in the dark for up to 60 feet, albeit only in black and white. Dwarves have a +2 bonus to fortitude saves against poison, as well as a +2 to all saving throws to resist magic effects. Dwarves have a +1 attack bonus against orcs and goblinoid monsters due to special training, and a +4 dodge bonus to AC against giant-type monsters. They have some even more specific abilities. Dwarves have stone cunning, meaning that they get +2 on appraise and craft skill checks when the role is related to stoneware or metal, as a traditionally dwarven background gives them a high familiarity with stone and metal as materials. Dwarves also get +2 search checks to notice unusual stonework or stonework that's hiding something, and passive checks to notice this unusual stonework. A passive check means that if a dwarf is within a certain distance from this object of interest, the DM rolls for them, essentially giving you the chance to notice these things without even intending to look for them. Dwarves are also allowed to treat dwarven war axes and dwarven ergoshes as martial weapons, meaning that dwarves of certain classes will get to wield them without having to take feats to do it effectively. For languages, dwarves speak Common and Dwarven automatically, and their bonus languages are Giant, Gnome, Goblin, Orc, Terran, and Undercommon. I'll end up talking more about all the languages further into the details portion of character creation, so you just kind of have to accept that this is true for now. The Dwarven favored class is Fighter, as it's one of the easiest vocations for an adventuring dwarf to fall into. Alright, next up is Elves. Elves are in many ways the opposites of dwarves, being capricious and known for arts, music, and poetry rather than craftsmanship, as well as an appreciation of nature. Elves are defined as a race that tend to keep a broad perspective of things, as their long lifespans temper their day-to-day nature. That doesn't mean they're Spock levels of emotionless, just that they're unlikely to be fazed by circumstance and are less motivated by the thought of immediate gain. It can also be said that since elves age slower, elven society moves slower as well. It can take a long time to gain an elf's trust, and if one makes a serious enemy, the vendetta will likely last until someone dies. Physically, elves are thinner and shorter than humans, being anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 feet tall and being around 110 pounds, give or take 20. They tend towards the frail, looking thin and gaunt. Elves have light skin, dark hair, and green eyes, with no facial or body hair. Elves become adults at 110 years old and can live to be over 700. They also don't sleep, they just meditate. They only need to meditate for 4 hours a day, but that might be kinda creepy depending on how you see it. This is commonly referred to as trance, as in an elf goes into trance at night, or trances for 4 hours. When it comes to the other races, elves consider humans classless but decent, halflings respectable and sedate, gnomes a little boring, and dwarves as spoil sports. They regard half-elves with pity if nothing else, and are unrelentingly mistrusting of half-orcs. Elves in D&D are very proud of being elven and tend to look down on non-elves, so take that as you will. Elven lands are sparsely populated, and the notion of an elven city is an almost alien concept. In general, there won't be a purely elven settlement with more than 200 people, and the general elven lifestyle involves living in harmony with nature. Your average elf also worships Corellon Laurenthian, also known as the Protector and Preserver of Life, who is the god of the elves. Elves have 3 names: a child name given by their family, an adult name they pick for themselves, and a family name. Family names in Elvish, like many real-world languages, tend to have literal meanings and be compounded of other words. In terms of alignment, elves tend towards chaos and good. Your average elf is capricious and operates on whim rather than law or logic, but has a moral code. When it comes to elven adventures, it's curiosity more than anything that works as motivation. Elves who decide to leave regular life behind desire to wander the world and have new experiences, although at their own pace. Now for the gameplay stuff. Like humans, elves are medium-sized and have a land speed of 30 feet. When it comes to unique benefits, elves get a +2 to dexterity but a -2 to constitution, as the elven body is frail but limber and graceful. Since elves do not need to sleep, they are immune to magical sleep effects, and have a +2 bonus to saving throws against enchantments or spells and spell effects that influence the mind. Elves also have low light vision, meaning that they have double the sight range of humans in poor light. Elves are also able to proficiently use longswords, rapiers, longbows, and shortbows regardless of class. The keen nature of elven senses also gives them a +2 on search checks, spot checks, and listen checks, as well as a passive check to find secret doors. Elves get Common and Elven as automatic languages, and Draconic, Gnoll, Goblin, Orc, Gnome, and Sylvan as bonus languages. The favored class for elves is the Wizard, as the studious lifestyle dedicated to the arcane appeals to many elves. Now we arrive at Gnomes. Gnomes are characterized in general as being an inquisitive and often unpredictable race, as being the tinkerers and the alchemists of the world. Gnomes have a simpler life than many other races, valuing pretty things, animals, and their sense of humor. Their curious nature is different from elves, however, in that the drive of gnomes can often lead to recklessness. Physically, gnomes are small, being only 3 to 3.5 feet tall and about 40 to 45 pounds. They tend to have dark brown skin with fair hair and blue eyes, males often sporting short beards. Gnomes, in general, get along well with dwarves and decently with halflings, but they're often suspicious of the taller races, although this doesn't tend towards hostility. This makes sense, as most gnomes tend towards good in their alignments. Gnome settlements are primarily underground and are hidden by the nature around them, as well as clever illusions and tricks, but visitors are usually welcome. The clan life in these burrows is very involved, and family is of high importance to most gnomes. As such, a gnomish adventurer can often be ostracized from their clan, as they tend to have abandoned clan duties in order to roam, and are thus layabouts at best and traitors at worst. Most gnomes worship Garl Glittergold, the Watchful Protector, who is the patron deity of gnomes. Gnome names are interesting in that a given gnome can easily have over a dozen, as they tend to be called different things by different individuals and family members. However, in dealings with other races, gnomes tend to use a personal name, a nickname, and their clan name. Now for the game stuff. Gnomes have ability modifiers of +2 to Constitution and -2 to Strength, as they're hardy, but their size makes them weak. Speaking of size, gnomes are small creatures, meaning they gain a +1 size bonus to armor class, a +1 to attack, and a +4 bonus on hide checks, but the weapons they use are smaller than normal and deal less damage, and they can only carry 3/4 of what a medium character can carry. Gnomes have a base speed of 20 feet, low light vision, and can treat the gnome hooked hammer as a martial weapon rather than an exotic one. Gnomes also gain a +1 to DC on all of their illusion spells, which I will define in the spellcasting video. Gnomes also gain a +1 attack against kobolds and goblinoid enemies due to familiarity against these types, as well as a +4 dodge bonus to armor class against giant types. Gnomes also get +2 to listen checks and to craft alchemy checks. Gnomes also get something called a spell-like ability, which means that once per day they can use a spell without having to cast it. Specifically, all gnomes have Speak with Animals as a spell-like ability, and gnomes with a charisma of 10 or higher also have Dancing Lights, Ghost Sound, and Prestidigitation. I'm not going to define those spells right now. My apologies, but there is a lot of ground to cover already. All gnomes start speaking Common and Gnomish, and can have Draconic, Dwarven, Elven, Giant, Goblin, and Orc as bonus languages. The favored class of gnomes is the Bard. A life of whimsy and music can be seen as appealing to many gnomes. The fifth race we're going to cover is the Half-Elf. Half-Elves in the Player's Handbook are specifically half-elf and half-human, and as such, don't really fit in with either race. Compared to elves, half-elves age rapidly, becoming adults at 20 years old, and often feel so ostracized by their communities that they leave to find their place elsewhere. Half-elves raised by humans often feel the same, as they're slower to mature and are more aloof in nature. Half-elves are often able to find some niche in human communities, but many choose to wander instead, as they feel ostracized by their very nature. Half-elves are, in personality, a halfway point between elves and humans, so basically any place on the spectrum between elves and humans conceivable is possible. Whether a half-elf looks more human or more elvish depends on who you ask. Whether a half-elf looks more human or more elven depends on who you ask, as most are more likely going to see the differences between the half-elf and themselves. Half-elves are slightly shorter than humans, ranging from below 5 feet to 6 feet tall, and weigh from 100 to 180 pounds. Half-elves look paler and thinner than humans, but their actual skin tone and hair color can vary. However, like elves, most of them have green eyes. Half-elves have no lands of their own, so their customs depend on who they were raised with. Half-elves raised by elves probably worship Corellon Laurenthian and are likely chaotic good, while half-elves raised by humans are more likely to worship Elona or some other human god, and are probably chaotic but not necessarily good. Half-elves have decent relations with all of the races that aren't unfriendly with elves, so basically with all of the playable races except half-orcs. Now for the gameplay stuff. Half-elves borrow elements of gameplay from both humans and elves naturally, so most of this will be retread. Half-elves are medium creatures, so again, no bonuses or penalties from size. They have a base speed of 30 feet, immunity to sleep spells, and a +2 versus enchantment, like elves. They have a +1 on listen, search, and spot checks, a +2 to diplomacy and gather information checks, and for effects related to race are considered as elves. All half-elves speak Common and Elven, although their Elven will be notably clumsier than pure elves. They also get to pick from all non-secret languages for bonuses just like humans, and again like humans, have no favorite class. Next up is the Half-orc, arguably one of the most misunderstood races in the game. The half-orc is, obviously, the result of a human-orc affair, and as such tend to be born into frontier tribes or barbarians where those races would collide, and they can be raised by either side, tending towards the attributes of where they were raised. Since orcs in D&D are almost always evil and barbarous, this leads to half-orcs having to deal with the nature of their existence on a daily basis, both on the social implications and on the impulses it gives them. Half-orcs are characterized as being short-tempered and restless, preferring action to inaction and to do rather than to think. Half-orcs tend to like simple pleasures in a simple life, with things such as complex art and philosophy seeming dull and contrived. This doesn't mean a half-orc cannot live in a civilized land. Many half-orcs, mostly the ones raised by humans, are perfectly capable of living in civilized society, however brash and rough they may seem. Physically, half-orcs are somewhere between humans and orcs, being significantly taller than humans at about 6.5 feet tall, but still significantly shorter than most orcs. They also weigh more than most humans, being broad, muscular, and heavy-set, usually weighing in between 180 and 250 pounds. Half-orcs are somewhat gray in color and have sloped foreheads, pronounced jaws, and large teeth, all of which are markers of their orcish heritage. Half-orcs also age much faster than humans, becoming adults at about 14 and rarely living past 80. In terms of racial relations, half-orcs have it the roughest. Since racial relations between orcs and the other humanoid races are almost exclusively violent, it can be very difficult for a half-orc to gain the trust of others, especially dwarves or elves. It isn't impossible, though. Every half-orc has their own way of proving themselves to others, and good half-orcs can always find a way to those who will trust them. Yep, you heard me, good half-orcs. While half-orcs tend towards chaos due to the brashness given to them by nature, and half-orcs raised by orcs are more likely to be evil, half-orcs raised by humans don't tend towards good or evil, meaning that they have just as much potential for both as humans. When it comes to religion, most half-orcs raised by orcs worship Grumsh, the patron deity of orcs, and even some non-evil half-orcs worship Grumsh, although many half-orcs raised by humans will worship human gods instead. Names are similarly divided, as the name of a half-orc depends heavily on who they were raised by, some having orcish or human names depending on said environment. Since half-orcs can have a hard time finding a niche in society, many choose the adventurer's life, as they're more likely to find camaraderie among other wanderers as well as outlets for violence. Alright, let's get into the gameplay stuff. Half-orcs get a +2 to strength and a -2 to intelligence and charisma, as their orcish heritage makes them strong but has adverse effects on their mind. Half-orcs, like most of the other races, are medium-sized, having no benefits or detriments based on size, and they have the standard land speed of 30 feet. Half-orcs also get dark vision like dwarves, and for all effects related to race, are considered as orcs. Half-orcs automatically get Common and Orcish as languages, and get Draconic, Giant, Gnoll, Goblin, and Abyssal as bonus languages. The favorite class for the half-orc is Barbarian, as most half-orcs will come from some variety of barbarian tribe on both sides of the family. We arrive finally at our last race, the Halfling. Halflings are typically characterized as being cunning, clever characters, preferring the thrill of danger to the tedium of formality, and enjoy the lifestyle brought about by wandering, as well as the promise of wealth, or rather of collection, whether it be of gold, weapons, books, or even more exotic things. Physically, halflings are fairly small, being about 3 feet tall and around 30 to 35 pounds, tending to have ruddy or reddish skin with black hair and brown or black eyes. Males tend to have sideburns, but other facial hair is a rare sight. They become adults at 20 and can live until 150. When it comes to the other races, halflings are on good terms with basically everyone, as the opportunism most halflings tend towards makes them excellent workers, if a little self-interested and clannish at times. They're most often found around human lands, as the ever-changing nature of human cities provide plenty of opportunity for financial and material gain. In fact, halflings have no lands of their own, as they are nomadic by nature, picking up and moving to wherever provides the most opportunity. Most halflings worship Yondala, the Blessed One, who is the guardian of nature and of the halflings, as well as many lesser gods. Think of something like the household gods phenomena of ancient Rome, where families or individual communities had deities they prayed towards with small domains of influence. Halfling names are very similar to human names in that they have a given name, a family name, and possibly a nickname, but the family names are often compound words that sound like nicknames. Think hobbits from the Lord of the Rings, Underhill and Proudfoot and Highbrush and stuff like that. Let's get into the gameplay stuff. Halflings get a +2 to dexterity and a -2 to strength, as they are agile, but their small size makes them weaker. Halflings, like gnomes, are small, meaning that they get a +1 size bonus to AC, a +1 to attack rolls, and a +4 size bonus on hide checks. But their smaller size means weapons made for them deal less damage and they can't carry as much. The halfling-based land speed is also 20 feet, meaning they can't move quite as fast as races with longer legs. Halflings get a +2 racial bonus on climb, jump, move silently, and listen checks, as halflings tend to be agile and athletic with keen ears. They also get a +1 to all saving throws and a +2 to will saves against fear, both of which stack. Halflings get a +1 to attack rolls with thrown weapons and slings due to the nature of slinging stones being a popular pastime and sport in the halfling communities. Halflings get Common and Halfling as starting languages, with Dwarven, Elven, Gnome, Goblin, and Orc as bonus languages. The favorite class of halflings is the Rogue, as they come very well to the lifestyle of stealth and skill. Alright, that wraps up the playable races in the Player's Handbook. Note that I said specifically the Player's Handbook. There are dozens upon dozens of playable races in the game total, including lots of variants on existing races, but we're keeping it simple for this introduction. I just want to be absolutely clear that this isn't all that there is. I also want to be perfectly clear on something I said a lot in this video, which is that most races tend towards or traditionally are various things. This doesn't mean that they have to be this way, or that your character has to be this way if they are one of these races. They can be anything you want them to be, and as long as you can explain why they are the way they are, no one's going to tell you you're wrong for making an evil elf or a chaotic dwarf, or at least they shouldn't. Exceptions to the rule exist in every aspect of life, That's what makes creating a sentient being so interesting, and what makes free will viable in the first place. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I hope you join me again next week. Bye-bye.